The morning sun spread a golden warmth across the southern road, lighting up the fields that stretched endlessly toward the horizon. Dee walked slowly, his old bag slung over one shoulder, dust rising with each step. He had been away for a long time, too long. The air smelled of earth and distant rain, and somewhere in his chest, a strange mix of excitement and worry stirred. He had come back to the south with one simple purpose: to retrieve his lost motorbike. But deep down, Dee knew that wasn't the only reason. There was someone he missed. Adam, his old friend, the one who had once shared meals with him, who had laughed with him through the hardest days. The closer he got to Adam's old house, the heavier his heart felt. The sound of cicadas echoed in the afternoon heat. "Maybe Adam is at work," he murmured to himself, forcing a smile. But when he reached the familiar wooden gate, everything was quiet. The house looked abandoned. Dust covered the floor, spiderwebs hung from the corners, and the stove was cold, untouched for months. Dee stood there for a long moment, his hand resting on the old wooden door. The silence pressed against him like a heavy stone. It was then that an old neighbor walked by, holding a bundle of firewood. "Looking for Adam?" the old man asked kindly. Dee nodded quickly. "Yes, I just came back. I thought he still lived here." The man sighed. "Adam left 2 months ago. Said he was going back to his hometown, maybe to the city after that. No one's heard from him since." The words hit Dee like a sudden gust of cold wind. He looked back at the empty yard, the broken chair under the mango tree, the place where they once sat sharing stories about life and hope. "He left," Dee whispered. His throat tightened. As the evening light faded, Dee sat quietly on the old steps. The air smelled faintly of the rain that was about to fall. He looked toward the distant horizon, wondering where Adam was now, whether he was safe, whether he still remembered the friend who once stood by him through countless storms. Fate had taken Adam far away, but somewhere in Dee's heart, a quiet belief remained that the journey was not over yet, that maybe, just maybe, life would let them meet again. That night, Dee couldn't sleep. He sat by the small window of the guest house, watching the rain fall endlessly outside. Each drop echoed softly against the tin roof, a rhythm that reminded him of nights long ago when he and Adam would sit by the fire, sharing rice wine and dreams about a better tomorrow. He remembered how Adam used to laugh, a deep, honest laugh that made even the darkest days feel lighter. "When life hits you hard," Adam once said, "just laugh louder than the pain." Those words had stayed with Dee through many lonely nights. But now, the thought that Adam might be gone, lost, or struggling somewhere far away, filled him with a hollow ache. He closed his eyes and could almost hear Adam's voice, calm and steady, saying, "Don't give up, Dee. Every road leads somewhere if you keep walking." The next morning, Dee rose early. The sky was still gray, the air cool and damp. He decided to visit Adam's old workplace, the plantation by the stream. The path was slippery, covered in wet leaves, but Dee walked on, determined. The scent of soil and fresh rain filled the air. When he arrived, only a few workers were left. They recognized him immediately. "Uncle Dee, it's been so long," one of them called out. Dee smiled faintly. "Yes, I came to find Adam. Do you know where he went?" The man shook his head. "He left quietly one morning. Said he needed to go home to take care of something important. We thought he'd come back, but he never did." Dee thanked them and stood silently for a while, listening to the sound of water flowing through the narrow stream beside the field. The water carried bits of leaves and twigs downstream, just like how life carried people away in unexpected directions. As he turned to leave, one of the older workers called out, "If you really want to find Adam, try asking at the old train station. Someone saw him there the day he left." Dee nodded, hope flickering once more in his tired heart. He looked toward the distant hills, the same direction where the old train tracks lay hidden beneath the mist. Maybe fate hadn't closed the door just yet. Maybe this journey wasn't just about finding a motorbike. Maybe it was about finding a friend again. The morning mist still clung to the trees when Dee arrived at the old train station. It was a small, forgotten place, the kind where time seemed to have stopped. The wooden benches were cracked, the sign half faded, and the sound of cicadas filled the air with a lonely hum. Dee looked around. Only a few travelers waited quietly, their eyes tired, their clothes damp from the rain. He walked up to the small tea stall by the entrance, where an old woman sat behind a steaming kettle. "Ma'am," Dee said softly, "do you remember a man named Adam? Tall, quiet, used to work at the plantation nearby. Someone told me he came here a few months ago." The old woman squinted, thinking, "Adam, yes, I think I remember. He came here early one morning. He looked troubled, like he had something heavy on his heart." She poured Dee a small cup of tea. "He took the morning train heading north. I asked if he was visiting family, but he just smiled sadly and said, 'I'm going to find peace.'" Dee's hands tightened around the warm cup. "Did he say where exactly he was going?" She shook her head. "Only that he didn't plan to come back soon." Dee nodded slowly, his chest tightening. Find peace. Those words echoed painfully in his mind. Adam had always carried a quiet sadness, one that even laughter couldn't fully hide. Before leaving, the woman handed Dee a small folded paper. "He left this behind on the table that morning. I kept it, thinking someone might come for it one day." Dee unfolded the paper carefully. The handwriting was unmistakable. Adam's. It was a short note. "If anyone finds this, tell Dee that I'm sorry. I needed time to face what I've been running from. Thank you, brother, for everything." Dee's eyes stung. He folded the note gently, holding it close to his chest. The wind blew softly, carrying the distant whistle of a train. The same sound Adam must have heard that morning when he left. Standing there on the old platform, Dee felt a deep silence settle over him, not empty, but full of memories. He whispered into the wind, "Adam, wherever you are, I'll find you." And with that, he began walking along the tracks, toward the north, where destiny, or maybe forgiveness, was waiting. The road north was long and winding. Dee walked through small villages where children played barefoot, past golden rice fields that glowed under the afternoon sun, and along quiet streams where the water whispered softly against the rocks. Every turn, every sound seemed to carry a memory of Adam. His calm voice, his gentle smile, his stories shared by the campfire during long nights of work. As Dee moved deeper into the countryside, the air grew colder. The closer he felt to finding Adam, the more uncertain the path became. In one village, he met a young man fixing a bicycle by the roadside. When Dee mentioned Adam's name, the boy nodded immediately. "Ah, yes, I saw him, a tall man with tired eyes. He helped my father repair the roof when the storm hit last month. Then he left, said he was heading toward the monastery in the hills." Dee's heart stirred with hope. "Did he say anything else?" The boy shook his head. "Only that he needed to find peace before he could return to his old life." Dee thanked him and continued walking. The path to the monastery wound through a thick forest, where the sound of birds echoed through the mist. Every step was heavy, but also full of determination. He could almost feel Adam's presence in the air, like a shadow walking just ahead. When night fell, Dee found shelter under a small wooden shrine by the road. The rain began to fall again, steady and rhythmic. He sat by the dim light of his flashlight, took out Adam's note, and read it once more. I needed time to face what I've been running from. Dee sighed deeply. He understood now. Adam wasn't just lost in the world. He was lost within himself. The rain grew heavier, drumming softly on the roof above him. Dee closed his eyes and whispered, "Just hold on, Adam. I'll find you, no matter how far you've gone." Outside, thunder rolled over the hills, but in Dee's heart, a small light of faith remained steady, guiding him onward through the darkness. The next morning, the fog was so thick that Dee could barely see a few meters ahead. The world felt silent, almost sacred. Following the narrow path uphill, he finally saw the outline of the monastery, an old wooden structure resting quietly on the mountainside. Bells chimed softly in the distance, their echo carried by the cold morning wind. Dee climbed the last few steps, his heart pounding with both exhaustion and hope. A monk sweeping the yard looked up as he approached. "Excuse me, brother," Dee said, his voice trembling slightly. "I'm looking for someone named Adam. He might have come here a few weeks ago." The monk studied him for a moment, then gave a gentle nod. "Yes, there is a man named Adam here. He arrived with nothing but a small bag and a heavy sadness. For days, he spoke to no one, but he's begun to smile again. He helps us repair the roofs and teach the children who come here." Dee's eyes glistened. "Can I see him?" The monk smiled softly. "He's in the garden, behind the temple." Dee followed the path around the old building. There, among rows of morning dew and wildflowers, he saw him, Adam, kneeling by the earth, planting small seedlings with careful hands. His hair was longer, his face thinner, but that calm, kind look in his eyes was still there. "Adam," Dee whispered. Adam froze. Slowly, he turned, disbelief washing over his face. For a moment, neither of them spoke. Then Adam stood, tears glinting in his eyes. "Dee, you came all this way." Dee stepped closer, voice thick with emotion. "I thought you were gone. Everyone said you disappeared. I couldn't just leave it like that." Adam smiled faintly, tears falling silently. "I needed to find peace, and I did. Thanks to you. Your kindness gave me the strength to face my past." Dee placed a hand on Adam's shoulder. "Then let's go home, together this time." They stood there, in the quiet morning light, as the mist slowly lifted to reveal the green valley below. Two old friends, reunited not just by fate, but by the bond of compassion that had never truly broken. In that stillness, Dee realized something profound. Sometimes, we lose people not because they vanished, but because they need time to find themselves. And when they do, love, patient and unwavering, will always lead them back. Life often takes us on journeys we never planned, not to find things we've lost, but to understand why we had to lose them in the first place. Dee's search for Adam was not just a physical journey across mountains and rivers, but a quiet pilgrimage of the heart. Along the way, he learned that love and friendship are not about possession or control. They are about patience, compassion, and faith in another soul's path. Adam's disappearance taught Dee, and all of us, that sometimes people must walk into the silence to heal their wounds. We cannot rush their recovery or pull them back before they are ready. All we can do is keep our hearts open, trusting that kindness will one day bring them home. And when that reunion finally happens, after pain, distance, and time, it is not just two friends meeting again. It is the return of understanding, forgiveness, and the quiet beauty of human connection. In the end, Dee realized that true friendship does not fade with absence. It waits, quietly, like light through the fog, steady, patient, and ready to shine when the heart finds its way back.